season of Atlanta is winding down as we're on to our second to last episode of the third season, and this one is directed by Donald Glover. Is it any good? Let's talk.
Go make a beat on that tape.
Season 3, Episode 9, the 30th episode of Atlanta. And this one is directed by Donald Glover. Again, this is the second time this season he's directed it after Treaty to the Bone episode from a few weeks ago. And this one I think is a lot better than his first episode that he did of this season, but I still think that this episode is another mixed bag episode. I don't think it is a classic Atlanta episode, except for a few elements. I do think that this episode actually has some real highs, but it also is just kind of run-of-the-mill, nothing too special, nothing that we haven't spoken about before on Atlanta. I do think that's a little unfortunate, especially since we only have one episode left of this third season, and I don't know how long of a break or if there is even going to be a fourth season of this show. So getting less episodes with the main cast this season, I think actually did hurt the show. I'm not gonna lie, I gotta be completely honest about that. The lack of Zazie Beetz this season has been very disappointing, only because I don't remember it being promoted as such, and also splitting up the season into 5 episodes away from the main cast, or 5 episodes I believe with the main cast. That also definitely did hurt it, but like I have said in previous episodes of this show, I do think that the 2 best episodes of this season have been these dream episodes. And this one, I was actually very excited for. Donald Glover directed it, and I'm also a big cinematography freak. I do love it when people play around with cameras and shooting in different styles. Like for instance, for example, in this episode, it's shot in black and white. We are dealing with a kid whose father is black, his mother's white. He clearly lives in an upper middle class neighborhood. He seems to side more he has friends who are only white. His father brings this up to him, and it doesn't seem like he's embracing his black side of his upbringing. He just seems to be only leaning towards white. Maybe he's using that as a way to make his life easier, or it's just how he genuinely feels. And I think that's what this episode is trying to show you. And also with this, but they shot it in beautiful black and white. I think that is the star of this episode, is that the cinematography. This felt like a Twilight Zone, Alfred Hitchcock, Brian De Palma film almost, actually. It felt very much like a film. They use certain things like in Brian De Palma where they use the split screen where they're showing one person doing one thing and then another people doing another thing, mainly in the sequence where our main character of this episode is trying to prove how black he is to a panel of 3 judges trying to get a scholarship to go to college. I really love the cinematography in that scene, and also the score that they used in that scene really did sell the tension. I think that's really what this episode was trying to do. This is more like a horror episode, which they have done in the past on Atlanta. I love the genre bending that Atlanta does, and I really did love that. I love the sequence towards the end at the school between our main character and then another character who also didn't get the scholarship because they said that he wasn't black enough either because his parents are from Nigeria. He himself is from Nigeria. Even though he hasn't been there since a young child, they deemed that he wasn't black enough because he can trace his heritage and he knows exactly where he is from. Whereas a lot of black Americans don't know their heritage because they were raised in a different country, brought here, and then they became slaves, and then their names were changed. So they have no idea exactly what their heritage is up to a certain point. So that was another thing that they brought up in this episode. Now, concerning the main topic of this episode, which is a mixed-race child, and what it's like to be accepted by either one side or the other, or even being accepted by both. Now, I think I brung this up on this show before, but I mean, if you look at our other videos on this channel, you'll notice that my wife is in a few of them. She is a mixed-race individual. She's black and white. Her father is black and her mother is white. So I watched this episode with her last night, and I just wanted to pick her brain a little bit to see if any of this is over-exaggerated, under-exaggerated, or what her thoughts are on being a mixed person in America. And she said that most of this is true. It is very hard to be black and white because the black side might see you as too white and the white side will see you as too black, and both will just not accept you. And that's what this episode is trying to show you. And it also just shows, like, I feel like in this episode the main character, he is just so angry throughout the entire episode. You could just see that he's not happy. He feels like the world's just picking on him personally. And, his father's kind of just wiping it off. Like, you gotta understand you're a black man and you like things are gonna happen. You're not always going to get what you feel like you deserve, and you gotta like just kind of accept that. His dad's kind of loose and like just explaining to him how the world works, and he's kind of like very nonchalant about things. Meanwhile, this kid's like life is like crumbling, and he doesn't know what to do. He's very lost. He wants to go to college with all his white friends, his white girlfriend. Then this guy, played by Kevin Samuels, comes, takes over he buys the school, changes it from Stonewall Jackson High School, which is an insane name, and changes it to his name. And Kevin Samuels actually played a great role in this episode. I actually really did love him. I thought it was really great, and it's pretty sad actually, because on May 5th, 2022, Kevin Samuels did tragically pass away. So 1 week before this episode actually aired, he did pass away. So that was pretty sad. And, then seeing him in here, me and my wife were both pretty like, oh man, that kind of does suck. Like, but what on the timing? Also, speaking of timing, another joke in here that is very topical, because they don't just film this week. Another joke that's so topical is when they call this guy, I knew another guy like you. His name was Clarence Thomas. If that isn't on the nose of what's going on in our world right now, here in America at least, I don't know what is. And I guess they have a lot to go by, but still, speaking of everything that's going on this week, I don't think you could have got more on the nose than that. So that was actually, I guess, lucky. It's going to draw more attention and more eyes to the show, which, as fans of Atlanta, we always want. But I just, sometimes things like that happen, and it is actually like, oh man, you couldn't have gotten better timing than you just did right now, huh? So that was another fantastic, a little jab at him. And I'm just trying to analyze how the kid is feeling, because I don't understand, because obviously you have to go from my perspective too. I'm a white man in America. There's no way I can understand what it's like to be a mixed person. I can only ask my wife, or what it's like to be a black person. I can only ask other people. So when I'm asking my wife about this, she said that personally, she always felt more accepted, I guess, she never really ran into super bad issues like this or anything like that where she was discriminated against, but she did say that she did feel like, it's hard to be accepted by both sides, because one side will always see you as black, or another side will always just see you as white. And it's unfortunate. You've heard this from other individuals who are mixed in this country of what they've had to deal with. It is a whole nother issue. Basically, especially when we see later in the one kid is Nigerian, so he's got dark skin, and this guy has light skin, and they both feel discriminated against for different reasons. But what they're trying to also show you is what exactly is happening in this country. And you might say, oh, it's a little too on the nose. And that is kind of very true in some aspects. It is very much on the nose, especially with certain things. I did notice, towards the end of the episode, they shot the Nigerian kid without saying freeze, but they said freeze to the white kid, or who they perceived to be white, so they were giving him more of a shot than who they perceived to be a black man. And it's, that's very on the nose, very topical of what's going on here in America. And I could see why some people would argue that, and say that this is just a middle-of-the-pack episode. It's not a lot of digging around for answers, really, in this episode, which one of my favorite aspects of Atlanta is finding the deeper meaning. I think the meaning here on this episode is very much on the nose. I don't think you're going to miss what the message of the episode is. But like I said, from a technical standpoint, I thought this was one of the best episodes I have actually ever seen from Atlanta. I love the tension. I love the horror aspects. I love the score. I just love the way this episode was shot. It just felt so much like a Twilight Zone horror episode of a show. That stuff I ate up. Now, is the story as good as other stories of Atlanta? No. Obviously, missing the main cast really does hurt this show. Even though if this episode is good, I still think this is a middle-of-the-pack Season 3 episode. I'm hoping that we get some answers wrapped up next week, because it is the season finale of Atlanta. And I would like to see where their plans are for the show going forward. Hopefully we get some answers on that. Hopefully Donald Glover provides us with more answers on what the future of Atlanta is. If you've ever looked up the Nielsen ratings for the show, it's not very high, but it does have a very big following. I mean, I don't know if I want it to ever become this big show, but I do really want more people to see this show, because I really do think it is one of our masterpieces of this generation as far as TV making goes, and it really should be acknowledged as such. But I understand if you come into this and you're thinking, well, this episode wasn't that great, and I completely understand that. It's not the greatest episode, but you will have fun watching it just like you always do. There's always a deep message to it. And if you're a fan of just cinematography, music, or just filmmaking in general, you're going to have a good time with this episode. From that standpoint, I can definitely recommend this episode. I hope you guys check it out, and I hope you guys join me next week where we're going to be talking about the season finale and the whole season as a whole of Atlanta. So guys, thank you for being a fan of Let's Talk. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and you tell all your friends.